All right, we're going to go ahead and get started and call this meeting to order. This is the Sustainable Economy Task Force, and it is 2:05 p.m. on Thursday, April 25th, 2024. And we have interpretation available, and so please let us know in the chat if you're having any issues with that. We have two wonderful interpreters here. So thanks to our interpreters for being here. I'm going to go ahead and get the agenda up so that we can get started. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So this is the agenda. We'll go ahead and get started and do roll call. So do we have HED Patricia Trujillo?
Yes. Hi.
Hi. Do we have GSD, Secretary Doucette? Do we have anyone from GSD? No? Okay. Do we have PED, Breezy Gutierrez?
Present.
Hi there. EDD, that's me. DFA, Leo Delgado?
Present.
Okay. Do we have anyone from MNERD, Anna Linden? Okay, no one from MNERD yet. Environment, Sydney Linneman? Nope. Okay. State lands, do we have Steve Vierk? Department of Workforce Solutions?
Present.
Here we go. TRD? Do we have Lucinda with us? Let's see. Do we have our chair of the advisory council, James Povila?
Here, present.
Hello. IAD, is Michael Chacon with us?
He is.
Okay. Hi, Michael.
Hi.
Okay, and lastly, SIC. Do we have Charlie Woolman?
Yes, Charles Woolman and Francesca Morani for John Clark, the SL.
Great. Hi, Charles and Francesca. Okay, and now it looks like we will approve the agenda. So I have it here for your review. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda. This is James Povila.
Oh, and
Second.
sorry, I forgot to ask, do we have a quorum? I believe that we do. I was counting earlier, but Michael, do you know if there's a quorum here?
Yes, looks like we have quorum.
Yes, okay, perfect. So I heard a motion to approve the agenda from James, and who was the second?
I seconded.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Great. So this agenda is approved, and now I will get our minutes up from March 20th. Just a second, bear with me. Okay. So these are the minutes from March 20th, 2024. And I'll let you take a quick look. And most of this discussion was pertaining to changing the time and setting a meeting on workforce development. And we've done both of those things. So thanks for being here with us during the new time for these task force meetings. We really appreciate it. Okay. Do we have a motion to approve these minutes?
So
So
moved.
moved, Michael.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second, James.
Okay. All in favor to approve these minutes from March 20th?
Aye.
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 Okay. Any opposed? Okay, great. Okay, well, we're gonna go ahead and move forward then to some important business of oh, hi Atsa. Some important business, and also I want to say thanks to the advisory council members who are here too, because that was one of the goals of sharing the invites with both of you guys. And so we've had some task force members in our advisory council meetings, and now I can see we have several advisory council members here. So thanks to everyone for being here. That's the goal, is to make these bodies a little bit more connected. And so as our task force members know, we approved an agenda for the year for the advisory council. And now that that's done, we would like to also approve, well, I'm going to present you a proposal. And so you can think about it, I'll send it out, but this is to have some initial discussion on it. And since our May meeting is already set, that sort of gives us some time to firm up the other topics for the remaining meetings. So with that in mind, what I'm going to do is I'll share my screen, and then I can share with you what I've been thinking about and discussing with our advisory council chair, James Poviwa, who of course is here with us, and see if you guys think that these are good ideas. And I'll preface it all with, the goal for these topics is to think about things that are cross-cutting across, the state plan target sectors and anything else that's implicated in economic development and sustainable economic development. So we're getting targeted input, not just on the target sectors from our advisory council, but we've also opened it up to say, beyond these target sectors, what's important to our advisory council members. So I'll also share with you a list of prompt questions that we have sent out to our advisory council members, and we're going to have them on our website as well. And what those are meant to do is to essentially open it up to any of the priorities and themes that our advisory council members consider to be important. And those do not have to be limited to the target sectors in the state plan. And there's also a section of questions that sort of allows for them to raise regionally important issues that they see within their communities and professional and home settings, anything that's feels urgent for them. In addition, there's a section of questions soliciting public input. And so I think that's really important too. And as many of you are aware, SB 112, gives us lots of room to consider outside research and to get really good public engagement on the state plan and the in-house writing of that we're now doing. So for anyone from the public who's listening, my contact information is on our website. I can also reshare it here if it's useful for you, and we really do invite you to be in touch with us with regards to any recommendations or suggestions that you might want to share. But with that in mind, it was Michael from the Center for Civic Policy who had raised the great idea of having a session on workforce in May, and I think that's a great way to kick off some of these cross-cutting themes that we're going to be looking at. So what I'm about to share with you is a list of other themes that I believe cut across economic development in the state of New Mexico. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that, and that involves topics, locations, and basically get your feedback on it now. I can make some tentative revisions based on what you have to say in response. And then beyond that, what we'll do is we can vote on a finalized agenda for the year in our next meeting. So here we go with our draft agenda for this year. Okay. So you can see over here in the right hand column, these are just some topics, and I'll talk through those with you in a second. Here's our locations, and these are some other possible locations. So I've written in Albuquerque for our May meeting because of course we already scheduled that with DWS, who are graciously hosting us. So that one is set in stone, and everyone is free to join us at the DWS Albuquerque offices. And the other one that I put in here as being pretty concrete is Roswell, because we're going to be having our advisory council meeting that same week near Roswell, potentially Mescalero. So we wanted to make sure that we're covering a location near and in the Permian. So that's the reason for having Roswell there. And I'm open to suggestions on that. But, one of the things is we have a limited number of advisory council meetings. And so we can't get to every location in our advisory council meetings, which is why I want to use some of our task force meetings to make sure that we cover a broad array of locations around the state. So like I said, workforce development is set in stone for May. And then I'm going to propose some other topics that I believe cut across the subject of sustainable economic development, and where your input would be especially helpful as we think about what the next iteration of the state plan will look like. So for June, and again, these are flexible. I did talk to Rebecca Roos in the governor's office about this infrastructure access topic, and she said that July would be most convenient. So I've positioned that there, but I think the rest are pretty flexible. So let me just tell you a little bit about them. So community benefits. Oh, it won't let me. Okay, community benefits. So let's say a bit about community benefits. That includes things like RFPs that the state might run. We think about this in-house at EDD as it pertains to kind of the provisions that we might put into particular contracts or intergovernmental agreements. Essentially, when money is flowing into the state or into communities, how do we structure those agreements in a way that they're being distributed fairly and equitably? So that's one thing, but that's also a feature of a lot of federal funding that is flowing into the state of New Mexico. And so, there's the topic of Justice 40, which most of you will know what that is, but President Biden, through an executive order, designated, earmarked certain federal funding that at least 40% of those funds would flow either directly or indirectly to so-called disadvantaged communities. But at a state level, I think there's an opportunity to be a little bit more specific about what that means. So, of course, a lot of federal grants, competitive grant applications are requiring conversations about community benefit plans and evidence of community benefit plans. And that's something that we discussed a little bit, I think, in would it have been our December meeting, I think, of the joint meeting of the Advisory Council and Task Force when we talked about the climate pollution reduction plan. So I think this topic of community benefits is a really important one, and I would love to see an interagency conversation on that, hear how you guys are approaching it, both within state funding and as you seek federal funding. It would be great to have your feedback there. And I'll just run through these and then you can chime in after. So the next one is infrastructure access. And I've spoken, as I said, with Rebecca Roos about this topic, but something that seems to come up again and again when we're having conversations in our advisory council, and has been a theme throughout, is just that the bare minimum for economic development is access to things such as water, energy, broadband, accessible transport, things like that. So, I think the governor's office has already been leading some conversations on infrastructure access. Rebecca has agreed that she would love to participate in a conversation like this, and this would be kind of infrastructure access or lack thereof as a barrier to equitable and sustainable economic development. So I'd love to have a conversation with y'all on that. The next one is revenue diversification, and that comes directly from SB 112 and, this tasking for us to think about transitioning away from somewhat singular reliance upon natural resource extraction or fossil fuels to think in a forward-thinking way to consider how we can, as a state, move towards diversified revenue to support things like healthcare and education. And then in September, because we're going to be concluding our input from the Advisory Council, both on target sectors in the state plan, but also any other recommendations that they might have or that the public might want to send to us, what I'll do is synthesize that in one document and present it to you. So September would be the time where we, as the task force, sit down and consider the inputs that we've been receiving. And then finally in October, what I would love to do is have a conversation on communities in transition. So this would look like not only just checking in on the Energy Transition Act and some of the different pots of funding that have been involved along those lines, but also, looking at the qualifying facilities, that were eligible under the ETA to seek funds, and but also pre-ETA, fossil fuel facility closures that we have seen, and that can be historic lessons from within the state, what people are experiencing, also the status of economic diversification in communities that are currently being affected by closures, and then a sort of forward-thinking conversation about what closures look like beyond just coal closures. And so I want to draw the distinction that on the one hand, it is very important to diversify state revenues overall, but of course the needs of communities that are impacted by fossil fuel facility closures are extremely different. And so to diversify those local economies looks very different than when you're having conversations about statewide revenue as a whole. So I think that would be great. And I know that our, for example, the Four Corners Economic Development, FORCED, participated in the National Association of Counties. I guess it was a capstone project, and it was for building resilient economies in coal communities. So they gave a presentation in DC a few months ago, and they've been thinking a lot about how they look at diversification. And I believe that they're also working with the Just Transition Fund to think about diversification. And I'm sure that folks who are affected by Escalante would also, maybe want to engage with us. So that's what I was thinking, but I'm open to other suggestions as far as other topics that cut across sustainable economic development. And so with that, I'll just open it up to you all to let me know how this looks. James?
Kayla, appreciate you doing a draft of this. And I also just wanted to point out that I put in the chat the schedule, the draft schedule for the council. I also wanted to express my appreciation to you all for switching the meeting time so that the task force meets after our council meeting. We, Kayla, myself, Michael, several others, either virtually or in person, were down in Las Cruces. And we've also mapped out what areas of the strategic plan we're reviewing in each one of those meetings. So in this planned, suggested, or draft agenda that Kayla has, I also think it's great that we have, for instance, in Roswell, our meeting of the council on that Tuesday will be in Mescalero. And so we hopefully are intending for our council members to, if possible, also attend the Roswell Task Force meeting as a joint meeting.
Yeah, awesome. And we can also we'll recirculate the advisory council agenda, and that way when you guys are giving me your thoughts on the task force agenda, you can sort of take a look at that and see how the two align. We can even create a document that puts them side by side, which I think would be good. So, but does anybody have thoughts on these topics? And I've been in touch with a few of you to discuss some of these, and in a second we'll have a specific conversation about the May meeting on workforce development, but please give me your thoughts and suggestions and ideas about topics.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
This is Leo De Bello, Department of Finance Administration. We were in touch not too long ago about the revenue diversification topic, and I don't believe my colleagues on the line as well, Lucinda Cito from TRD. Excuse me, but when it comes to the general fund revenues, both TRD, excuse me, TRD and DFA have quite a bit of historical data and information on the state's general fund revenues by the major programs, gross receipts, personal income, as well as some of the major revenue sources from oil and gas activities in the state, and along with land grant permanent fund and service tax permanent fund transfers over to the general fund. Of course, SIC would have more information on those particular items, but TRD and DFA would have historical data and information in regards to those revenues. So just wanted to chime in and mention that.
Yeah, that's great. And it looks like, I've actually been in touch with, on that specific topic, I think everyone who has some expertise to offer. So it sounded like people were excited about it and willing to help. And so as you'll see when Raquel comes on to talk about the workforce meeting in May, each of these would be sort of co-planned and facilitated with you all, with any task force members who have that relevant expertise to contribute. And that's, of course, I'll caveat that with also saying that some of our advisory council sessions will also require your input. So for example, we're going to have a section on film and television, and I'm going to be asking my counterparts from EDD, from our film office, to attend. So it's not just the task force meetings that we want your expertise on. We certainly want you contributing to advisory council meetings too. So we'll extend invites for those. But yeah, so each of these that you see here will be sort of co-planned with any relevant agencies and entities on our task force. And so that also goes for, of course, the infrastructure access meeting, which, like I said, Rebecca is going to be willing to help with. And then, yeah, so for communities in transition, I can imagine a few that would be working on that one, as well as community benefits. Does anyone have other thoughts on topics that you feel are missing here, or does this look pretty comprehensive as far as a list? I know we can't cover everything, so that's why I wanted to figure out what we aim to prioritize.
I think this is a good list of topics. It looks like it covers a lot. I guess it comes down to the details on how granular you want to get as you explore these, topics. I think we can contribute some information when it comes to revenue diversification and some of the things that the SIC is doing on both just the growth of the permanent fund distributions, which have been massive, and the things that we're doing investment-wise specific to New Mexico that might impact some of these areas. Now, understand we don't do direct investments, but the SIC does make investments in funds that target emerging technologies, hard science, startups in New Mexico, and certainly that's an area that I think we can add some information, at least food for thought.
Yeah, and I'm sure that ahead of then, because once we release this schedule, I know the public is gonna want to be writing to us with comments, and it doesn't have to be in advance of a meeting. I know that we're getting into shape here, and ideally would have approved this sooner, but we are at where we're at. So, and what I told our advisory council members too is, like, it doesn't have to be a fully baked thought, and it doesn't have to be before the meeting or during the meeting. You can write to me after, you can call me, any sort of input that you want to bring, because my goal is just to collect the most comprehensive inputs to the state plan drafting process as possible. And I want it to be accessible for everybody. So really, in whatever format people are comfortable writing in and speaking to me, or scheduling a one-on-one conversation, that can absolutely happen. And then I will say too, I'm leaving November open because I think it's going to be a lot of information when I show you what's in the synthesis from the advisory council meetings. And then, of course, we have to comply with the timeline here in terms of at least providing updates to the legislature, I believe in October. So we'll be cognizant of that timeline, but we can leave November open because I think these will all be fruitful conversations and it'll be ongoing. So we can let some of those prior conversations inform how we proceed, and we'll probably be determining a new agenda at that point, because we're not exactly in the calendar year. We have a different schedule here. So that sounds great. Yep. Anybody else? Yep.
Michaela, just noticing November 28th this year is Thanksgiving.
Okay, well, we'll move that around. Thank you. There we go. Put it in red to make it alarming. Yeah, and then for communities in transition, I can imagine, probably DWS will have some really valuable inputs there as well. And I know that some of the regional reps for DWS have really been on the ground working with some of the displaced workers. And we also recently attended an excellent presentation from Mr. Wade Buchanan, who's head of the Colorado Office of Just Transition, which focuses a lot more narrowly on the worker component of this issue. But he had some great framing data and concepts, and I would love to have a similar check-in about where this stands for the state of New Mexico. James?
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight a comment in the chat about a suggestion to potentially cover cleanup and remediation and public health impacts as it relates to workforce development. And I think it might also fit in with communities in transition.
Yes, and actually that's perfect. Thank you for, Yucca, hi. Thanks for bringing that up. We plan to cover that in the workforce meeting. And so Raquel will show you, I think, a little planning document in a bit that we've worked on together, but we definitely want to pull in the folks from MNERD and Environment who are working on remediation. And then, yes, I agree for sure. During communities in transition, we should also talk about that. And I'm thinking about this more broadly too, because I know that unfortunately some of the federal funding opportunities are not as geared towards uranium mine remediation. And I'm glad I've been in touch recently with Mayori, who's been educating me a little bit about that. But I view this as extremely important. And so we're also thinking about federal funding opportunities as an economic development opportunity for the state of New Mexico, and thinking tons and tons about remediation. And I think federal funding and ways of securing and going after federal funding has been under prioritized, if not completely overlooked, in past iterations of the state plan. So we can definitely have that conversation as far as what those resources and efforts look like within the state, and then also what they look like with regard to federal opportunities in that way. And, pinpointing the greatest sites of need, because I think when we think about economic development, we need to be thinking about equitable opportunities, and certainly environmental hazards are a barrier to equitable outcomes. So yeah, I'm definitely on the same page with you for that. Anybody else have some comments, suggestions? Great. So what I'll do, I'll put this in a landscape format maybe, and I'll just put it in the same document as the advisory council agenda so that you can see them side by side. Some of it's going to get tricky with locations. That's why I left those tentative, and we may just have to think about feasibility as far as not making people do long drives in the same week. But in terms of the Roswell visit, I think, in September that can make a lot of sense, because of course we'll hopefully be in Mescalero right before that. So great. Well, I'll circulate this and we can touch base on it again next time. But I think now I'll stop sharing and we can pivot over to the conversation about the May meeting. Yeah. And the agenda says voting on topics to finalize, but we will hold off on that because we have some important members missing, and I want to make sure that they have a chance. So Raquel, if you wanna join us, and we can just talk about the May meeting on workforce development and different agencies that we were hoping to involve in that.
Yeah, thanks, Kayla. Let me share my screen and I'm going to share the draft agenda that we've been working on. So I did want to add that we had a similar cross-agency workforce effort presentation that DWS did with MNERD and Economic Development for the governor's office, which spawned a lot of these ideas because we realized that a lot of different agencies have workforce, or they're working on workforce projects or workforce initiatives that maybe we didn't know about. And it's just an opportunity to collaborate and partner. Share my screen. I don't know, I can't
Oh,
share it.
I made you co-host. Let's see if maybe if I make you host. Does that work?
No.
Hmm.
Okay, hold on. I think I got it.
Okay.
Here we go. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, thanks. So just again, this is just a draft, some ideas, agencies to loop in for planning. We don't have MNERD or environment here today, and they are, of course, two major players when it comes to infrastructure and renewable energy workforce initiatives. But we have been working really closely with each of the agencies. So I believe that we have enough information, and I'm definitely going to reach out after this meeting to make sure that I capture all of the upcoming projects or federal grant funding opportunities that are being pursued, any current workforce initiatives that are happening within the agency, because we want to highlight that during the meeting. So this isn't just what the Department of Workforce Solutions is doing, this is what everybody is doing, right, as it relates to infrastructure and renewable energy. We thought it would be a good idea to invite additional attendees, just like Kayla mentioned. We have some great partners in the UA Local 412, which is our plumbers and pipe fitters apprenticeship program, the IBEW, who are our electricians union apprenticeship program, and they have some great upcoming pre-apprenticeship programs to build that pipeline as it relates to infrastructure and renewable energy. So they would be a really great resource for the meeting to be able to provide some additional insight. And we also wanted to reach out to those of you here in HED and PED to maybe share with me any education and training initiatives as it relates to the infrastructure workforce, so that we can highlight that. I'm working on the slides on the presentation, but would really love any feedback or information if you have it so that we can share that. And the way we envision the meeting in May is going to be, we're going to pull a lot of data as it relates to clean energy. What are the wages looking like? General workforce trends, our labor force participation rate, our employment gap, which is some great information that really sets the tone for what New Mexico is looking like as it relates to workforce as a whole. So there's going to be plenty of workforce data that we will be presenting. And then just from the department, the secretary will be present. We will have representatives from our Economic Research and Analysis Bureau, and then our Economic and Business Team Rep, who is a hybrid employee between Economic Development and DWS. So a lot of great resources from Workforce. Again, it's going to be in person, so hopefully most of you can make it in person to TIPA. We're located on Broadway and Martin Luther King Jr. downtown. It's a big conference room, and we're excited to host everybody in person. Forgot to mention that. And again, more meeting topics, just kind of talking about what DWS does and works with businesses to identify what upcoming jobs and occupations, and then sharing that with community college, our community colleges and higher institutions of learning, sharing about what our sector strategy meetings look like. Last week, we released our broadband plan, as it relates to our sector strategy meeting that we had in December in partnership with OBI. So that's really exciting. It's phase one of a two-phased plan, and that was a really big press release that went out last week. If you haven't had a chance to look at it or didn't receive it, I'd be happy to share the link. It's broadband expansion. Let's see. And then again, just to highlight a few other areas in terms of directly transferable skills. We can work with not just MNERD, but other departments to provide an overview of relevant fields, such as geothermal or orphan well remediation, as mentioned earlier. And if anybody has any other suggestions or feedback as to maybe what we shouldn't include or what maybe we can elaborate on, please let me know. But this is the draft agenda for May. Again, the goal is just to share what the agencies are doing as it relates to infrastructure and renewable energy workforce. And it'll be an opportunity for us to further partner and to provide that information towards the strategic plan, right? Kayla, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, so I think what's important to say, we were hoping to capture in this meeting a bunch of different areas of workforce development that are implicated in both economic diversification and energy transition. And like I was saying earlier, that takes place at the state level in terms of, for example, there are all these new fields in things like in terms of energy, there's efficiency and assessors, all these new talents that we're going to need as our economy becomes more sustainable. So that's kind of like meeting the needs of the future with really good data now. And of course, those are also present needs. I know that that's rapidly expanding. So there are federal grants for that. And I know that MNERD will be able to highlight some of that. But then the other component of it is this more the community level needs that arise around things like displaced workers and coal plant closures. And so DWS has a lot of relevant expertise to bring and has described to us some of the methodologies that they used in order to get in touch and see what the future economies of coal communities might look like. So we just want to make sure that we're as inclusive as possible to both the statewide picture and then the reality on the ground in some of these affected communities. And we're open to other suggestions about, other framing, other lenses that might be helpful here. But yeah, and we'll circulate something more formal as well. This was kind of us spitballing initially. We've met a couple of times to make sure that we're considering everything we need to, and then each of the relevant agencies will be receiving kind of instructions from us about how to proceed and what we might need from them in the way of data. Great. Anybody have inputs on this or questions? Maybe we can, yeah, let us know if you have inputs or questions.
This is Patricia from HED. I just wanted to say thank you for including us, and please, if you can follow up via email, I can put you in contact in particular with Dr. Amber Gallup, who is our Director of Adult Education, And I know that they have a lot of IETs planned in this sector. And so I would love to have that represented in the presentation.
Yeah, perfect. And I saw a question in the chat about whether this will be shared. So yes, this will essentially become an agenda that is shared. But we can also put it out more in advance since it's pretty much almost finalized at this point. And everything that I've been mentioning will be shared. So like I said, the advisory council, we had circulated a list of prompt questions to inform engagement on the target sectors and any other relevant topics that they might want to talk about. So we're going to get that posted to the website, and then the public can also take a look at that and feel free to use it as a basis for inputs that you might send to me, which could include anything from, we don't think this is important, we think this is important, to, hey, you really need to be reading this one study. It's super relevant to the plan. So be creative, send me what you care about, and definitely use those questions as a starting place, but it doesn't have to be the end all. So yeah, any of our task force members have other inputs or suggestions?
No, just to appreciate you, Raquel, and everyone else who worked on the plan. It looks good to me. I might take another look at it prior to finalizing, but it is looking really good to me.
Great. Yeah,
Thanks.
and what I'll also highlight for you all that we got 2 of our working groups, our advisory council working groups, up and running. And so the questions I just mentioned aren't the only way, of course, that we'll be getting public input. That's just me extending the invite that you can contact me if you have anything you want to say. But 2 of the working groups that will inform how we're thinking about all of these topics, including not just workforce, but everything that the task force is talking about and everything that goes into the plan. Assuming that time permits, we've got a working group on tribal engagement, which of course is complementary to, but not in substitution for tribal consultation. And then we're having a working group on community engagement as well. So the idea, it's a lot to juggle, and of course, we're a small team over here, so I'll do my best. But the idea is to be having these agency conversations while we're also having advisory council conversations, and those are symbiotic. And then we really want a robust process of public and tribal engagement as well. So that's just to help you picture it. But I know it's been a long time coming. One of the things I've been doing is creating a write-up to summarize where this process stands, where both bodies are, how they relate to each other. I'm hoping to create a graphic that summarizes the relationship between the plan, the advisory council, and the task force, and the public. Maybe it should be a square. But I'll share that with you, and hopefully that gives a bit more understanding to how this is all working. I know we've kind of gotten into motion super quickly, and it's a lot to take in, but I already like it better how it's functioning now. And especially, it's just important that our task force and advisory council members are attending one another's meetings. So we really appreciate you all being here. But unless we have any other inputs from our task force members on the May meeting, and please know that we'll be in touch with you further. But if we don't, then I will probably move us into public comment, but I'll just leave a second. Do any of our task force members have any further comments or inputs? And thanks so much, Raquel, for being here to help me introduce this. Anybody else from the task force? No? Okay, well, we're going to move into public comment, I believe, then. Anyone from the public have a comment and want to raise their hand or throw it in the chat? Any of our advisory council members have something to share?
Kayla, I'll just highlight, do a plug for our May SEEK meeting, which will be hosted in Silver City the day after Labor Day. So if any folks are down in the Gila camping, you should stop by Silver City and come to the meeting. And we'll be highlighting outdoor recreation and film on the film industry.
Yeah. And since it doesn't sound like anyone's too opinionated about where we host additional task force meetings. So to anyone from our advisory council or from the public who's listening in, if you have a compelling offer to host us somewhere and you want us to consider coming to you, please just email me, be in touch, and we can think about that. All right. Well, seeing no further comment, I guess, do we have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
We adjourn. James.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Who was the second? Charles?
You can put me down, that's fine.
Okay, great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Well, we're going to adjourn this meeting of the Sustainable Economy Task Force on Thursday, April 25th at 2:56 p.m. And I know many of you will be dashing off to this 3 p.m. So we appreciate you. We'll see you later. And we're looking forward to a very full schedule this year. Looking forward to working with you. Thanks. Take care.